Brilliant. And so thank you everyone for joining us. This is our third session. And today we're going to be discussing the hypnobirthing practices and nutrition regarding the second trimester. And I think this is a really interesting point of the pregnancy where things are really starting to shift. I'm Richelle. I'm a naturopathic nutritional therapist. I'm a nurse specializing in fertility and women's health. And a health coach for the NHS. And together, I'm running this session with Charlotte, who is a fantastic hypnobirthing specialist. So I'm going to pass over to Charlotte for her part of the session.
Great, thanks, Richelle. I'm just going to get a few slides up. So we're going to go through some hypnobirthing techniques for trimester two. So yeah, as Richelle said, it's a lovely trimester because it's when you finally start to feel a bit pregnant and you feel all lovely. So we're going to see how we can complement that tonight. So I will just share my screen. Just give me one moment. Okay. Are we all good? I'm just going to check that you can see that screen.
All good.
Oh, good. Great. Well, like it says there, let's get started. So, as Richelle said, I'm Charlotte. I'm a hypnobirthing instructor. I have three kids of my own, and I had very different birth experiences with each one. I used hypnobirthing in my second two labour and births, and they were much better than the first one. So this is why I teach hypnobirthing to help people have better birth experiences. So we're going to talk about trimester two, and it's often referred to as the blossoming phase because it's where everything comes together. We've not got the nausea and sickness so much that we maybe have in trimester one, and everything's a bit more settled in trimester two. So I like to think of it as finding your flow. So you're starting to settle into your pregnancy. You may have a little bit more energy than you had in trimester one, but obviously there's still some tiredness happening because you're growing a lot of things for that baby, including organs and bones and all sorts of things. You can become more aware of baby's movements in trimester two as they get bigger and the space gets smaller. You can feel them moving around a lot more, which is really, really nice. This can cause a little bit of discomfort, so you might find that you have a bit more backache and just general sort of soreness, and sleep can be a little bit of an issue. From a hypnobirthing point of view, in trimester two, we're looking to focus on releasing any tension that we're feeling in our body and being more aware of what our body's doing and how it's developing. Building like positive associations with the changes that are happening in our bodies. So you might find that your breasts are starting to get a little bit bigger. Like I say, some sort of aches and discomfort that you might have in your body. Your bump will start to show a lot more in trimester two as well. So we're really trying to focus on accepting and loving these changes that we're experiencing within our body. And we'll start to use some hypnobirthing techniques to help us feel calm with the symptoms that we're experiencing in trimester two, but also in preparation for birth as well. So when we look at hypnobirthing techniques for feeling calm and confident, what we're looking to do is to bring more relaxation into our daily routines. So particularly in first pregnancies, I think can be difficult because people are often working full time and work definitely takes a priority. That's what I find from my clients. But your pregnant body is trying to tell you to slow down, particularly in trimester two, because we're going to be going into trimester three, which is definitely a period where we have to slow down just because baby's getting bigger and bigger and we're getting nearer to labour and birth. So we want to do more relaxing. We want to plug in some breathing techniques. So this is really useful practicing for labour and birth, but it also helps reduce any stress or anxiety that you might be feeling in trimester two as well. And that can be with anything. Life in general can be quite stressful. And when you're growing a human, that can come with all sorts of side effects as well. And then we'll look at positive touch. So this is just about taking a moment, maybe placing your hands on your bump and really tuning into baby. This can be really useful as well in later stages of pregnancy or labour and birth because it just helps ground you in the moment instead of your mind thinking about this and that and everything else that's going on. It can really just help you to slow down and just appreciate where you are in your pregnancy or labour and birth. So in trimester 2, we're really starting to try and connect our mind and body with baby. So we're trying to bring all those three elements together so that when we progress through pregnancy, we're really working with our mind, our body, and our baby to make pregnancy and labour and birth as smooth and comfortable as possible. We do this by starting to look at affirmations. So you might find an affirmation track that you really enjoy listening to, or you might write yourself some affirmations. This helps bring lots of positive messages into your brain, which helps you feel much more calm and in control when it comes to your pregnancy. Visualization is a really strong tool. In trimester 2, the visualization work that you can do is sort of visualizing baby and what they're doing. So if you have a bit of discomfort or backache, or I had this random craving for dairy, but I found out it was because my babies are growing bones at that point. So when you have these like weird moments, try and visualize baby and how they're growing and what they might look like, and it will help ease the symptoms that you might be having. And then breath work. So breathing is really important in pregnancy, but particularly in labour and birth. It really helps calm your nervous system. So have a look at some breathing techniques that you can do. The best one for trimester 2 is a sort of is a breathing technique where you breathe in for 4 and out for 7. And what will happen then is that shorter in breath will just calm everything down, and the long out breath just starts driving that breath down towards baby. It's a really useful labour technique as well, is that type of breath. So it's in for 4 and out for 7. So if we have a look at a few affirmations for trimester 2, so you can write your own if you want to. There's just a few suggestions here. So my body and baby are working in perfect harmony. So when you're experiencing any of those symptoms or you can't sleep, just repeating these to yourself can really help calm your mind and help you reconnect with what your body's doing, which is magic. I feel strong, calm, and confident in my changing body. So sometimes we can have a few body hang-ups. We might think that the bump maybe looks a bit more like you've had a big dinner. Not so much towards the end of trimester 2, but sometimes at the beginning of trimester 2. But if we just start to accept some of the changes that are happening within our body and the reasons why they're happening, that can really help build your confidence as well. And then another one on here that's suggested for you is each movement reminds me of the miracle unfolding within. So like I said, growing a baby is absolute magic. So just reminding yourself of the amazing job that your body is doing is really, really powerful. So that's my bit done. I feel like I went very fast.
No, that was really good. That was
Okay.
really, it was really interesting, Charlotte, because to see, I'm not from a hypnobirthing background, and it's really interesting hearing about the different sorts of breath. I love breath work, and hearing about the different types of breath work that you would use at different points
Yeah.
in the labor and the pregnancy for different reasons, and the affirmations and the power of that, I thought was really like such a good point, like when you said about you really think about what the baby
Yeah.
be put yours really, really amazing. I've actually got two questions that people had asked me before.
Yeah, cool.
So one of them was, when should I start hypnobirthing?
Okay, that is a good question, and it is one that I get asked quite a lot. So I usually recommend from around 28 weeks, if it's a first pregnancy. Sometimes if it's second pregnancy or subsequent pregnancy, we can start a little bit earlier. I don't really like to go anywhere beyond 32 weeks if possible, because most of my courses are 4 weeks long. So obviously we don't want to go too close to D-Day. So yeah, so around the 28-week point is a really good place to start.
Brilliant. And then the second question I got was, how does my partner get involved?
Oh, that's a fabulous question. So yeah, birth partners, I always say, I think they sometimes think their job is to sit in the corner and scroll the phone. But there's lots that the birth partner can do, not just in labour and birth, but also at this point in trimester 2. So this is the point where we really want to start connecting together as a team. So get your birth partner on doing the breathing techniques with you, writing some affirmations with you, and also offering you like supportive and caring words and really, really looking after you, because this whole journey is a lot. So they really need to be there for you at this point as well, and sort of acknowledge the amazing thing that you're doing growing this baby. Is that
Thank you. Yeah, I think acknowledging what the partner can do is a very important thing that I get asked a lot in the clinic.
yeah,
And I think a lot of the time some partners just don't know
yeah,
how to get
yeah,
involved. And I think like what you like that you definitely made a great point in just, I think sometimes you just have to say, this is how I need support, this is what I need. Because otherwise I think it sometimes can be quite confusing on if you're not the one going through the actual body changes to know exactly what you need. So I think sometimes you're saying that this is exactly what I'm going to need. And, getting involved in those affirmations is a great one because you're really then working together, like you said.
yeah. And sometimes like you can say to yourself, "Oh, I look beautiful," but if someone else does it, it just can resonate a little bit more on those days when you're feeling a bit bloated, not pregnant, and all those kind of things. So yeah, and I just think like birth partners nowadays, they want to be involved anyway. It's not like you have to drag them to the table. Like in my experience, all my clients' birth partners are like really, really good, and they want to know what they can do to support you. So yeah, just get them involved, but be clear on what it is that you need or don't need as well.
Brilliant. Okay, so my session is going to be, I'm going to be talking about the nutrition and how, and not just nutrition, the part of a naturopath is about looking at what we can do holistically to support the body in making sure that it is getting that what it needs naturally in for that goal. And so if we're talking about the second trimester, what can we do in lifestyle and diet to make sure it's working to its most optimum? And you touched on it in terms of this is the second trimester is when many women are starting to feel a lot better. A lot of people call it the honeymoon period of pregnancy. You've got those reduced kind of nausea and feelings of kind of the baby's not really there, and you're starting to really get a sense of this baby that you're connecting to. But it's really crucial that you are doing what you can to support the pregnancy and those changes that are happening. So if we're looking at the nutritional needs of the second trimester, so it's a shift up from the first trimester. So we're now looking at an increase in the amount of calories a day that are going to be required. So you're going to be needing about 340 extra calories a day on top of what you were already having before pregnancy. So that's if you think about foods, that's kind of an extra 2 slices of whole grain toast with some nut butter. So we need to make sure that we are getting in those extra calories for the growing baby. And it's really about focusing on the quality of the calories, not just the quantity. So really making sure that you're getting those nutrient dense foods, those whole foods, foods that are not overly processed, they're not overly sugary. It's definitely something to mention in terms of sugary foods because this is when women are starting to potentially get noted down for things like gestational diabetes. And it's important to bear in mind, I think a lot of people will say to me, oh, I don't add sugar to my tea, or I don't add sugar, but it's not just sugar that has an impact on our sugar levels. It's all carbohydrates. So if you're having a high carbohydrate diet, always pasta, lots of bread, lots and lots of fruit, which sounds like a great thing, but if you're having all of these carbohydrates in the body, they're all broken down into sugar. They all have a knock-on effect. And these are the things that would have an impact on things like gestational diabetes. So you must make sure, kind of like I touched on before, that you're getting a balance of your carbohydrates, but also with your protein and your healthy fats. But getting the balance together is going to make sure that your body is not absorbing the sugar too quickly. So really trying to make sure that you're aiming for, ideally you want to be aiming for a gram of a kilo of a gram. God, I lost my words today, but a gram of protein per kilo of your body weight. So if you weigh 70 kilos, you want to be aiming for about 70 grams of protein. And obviously bear in mind, as you will be increasing in weight, you need to bear that in mind as well in terms of making sure you're accounting for that with the protein. And again, really trying to make sure you're getting, there's lots of ways of getting protein in the diet, but it's really good to get nice, clean, lean sources. So if you can get organic meat, fantastic. But if you can't afford that, then really looking at things like eggs, and beans and tofu and dairy, lots of ways of getting protein into the diet. And when we talked last time about the nutrients that are needed, those nutrients are all still needed. So folate, still really important for the neural development of the baby. Calcium, really important for the bones. And absolutely, when you get those cravings, just like Charlotte said, when you get those cravings for specific foods, it's a bit of we always say to when I have a client come through, I always say, whatever you're craving is an indication of what the body is craving. So if you're craving dairy, it's that the body is at that point requiring it in order to be using it like, for example, creating bones. But specifically, if we're thinking about the nutrients, when we're thinking of the second trimester, iron is really, really important. It's needed specifically for the blood cell production, and that's really important for creating the blood volume for yourself, the mother, but also for the baby. And it's really important for making sure that you're not getting things like anemia and feeling really, really tired. And low iron levels are specifically found and tend to become more common in the second trimester, because this is when you get those shifts of blood volume occurring. So it's really important. I mean, there is an aim with iron. You want to be aiming for about 27, 28 milligrams a day. But to be honest with you, the main thing you want to know is that your pregnancy supplement, a lot of them will have iron in. If you don't have iron in your pregnancy supplement, you want to be making sure you are getting iron in your food. So whether that is, for example, animal sources, so red meat, fantastic source of iron. But if you're vegetarian, for example, going for plant-based sources of iron, things like beans and lentils, but bearing in mind that their absorption can be limited. So the best thing to do is to be pairing with foods that are rich in vitamin C. So for example, if you've got your lentils or your beans and you're eating them with broccoli, you're going to be increasing the absorption of the iron from those beans. So it's really important to kind of have those pairings together. Still making sure that you're having your prenatal vitamin continuously throughout the pregnancy. And hydration is really key during the second trimester. I touched on the fact that the blood volume is shifting. And with that shift in blood volume, we need hydration and fluids to be able to support that. So it's always important to be aiming ideally for mainly water. It's okay to have some other drinks in there as well, but obviously, as we touched on, you want to be really trying to limit the processed drinks, the fizzy drinks, the things with high added sugar. Really, again, we're sticking to the maximum of 200 milligrams a day of caffeine. So really trying to get in as much, predominantly water, and aiming for 1.5 to 2 liters of fluids a day as a minimum. But that will be more if you are exercising or if it is hot. And obviously at the moment it is not. But but definitely important for exercise. And I think sometimes this is something that's not thought about. And exercise is really important. The beginning of the pregnancy, it's something where a lot of people, especially a lot of people who've had IVF treatment, they're very anxious to do any sort of fertility treatment until they've had kind of, the 12-week scan, and they absolutely know that everything is really fine. So a lot of people stay off exercise, but it is absolutely safe to be doing exercise throughout the pregnancy. Just be mindful of the exercise that you are doing. So it shouldn't be anything that is involving, any contact sports or lying flat on your back for long periods of time, because things like this could impact on the pregnancy. But things like swimming are fantastic. Prenatal yoga, brilliant. Just make sure that you let the yoga teacher know that even I was going to say, I always tell people, even if you're in a prenatal class, let them know what trimester you're in, because that can also shift up the positions of yoga that you do. So it's just really important to always let whoever you're doing exercise with know where you are in the pregnancy. Let them know if you've had any complications, so they're fully aware. But you should definitely be looking at making sure that you're getting some form of exercise in your weekly plan, because that really helps with circulation of the blood, your mood, your sleep, and it's really good for labor preparation as well. So you ideally want to be aiming for like 150 minutes a week of moderate exercise, but to be honest, there's no stress about it. Just really trying to make sure that you're, walking when you can and really trying to get in exercise where you can is really, really important. And Charlotte touched on the fact that things can become a little bit more uncomfortable in the second trimester. You're really starting to notice this shift now in the weight, and that shift in weight can have a really big impact on your posture and your back and your muscles, and that can have a knock-on effect on other parts of your body. If you're feeling this sudden shift of weight going forward, you have to now think about your change in your center of gravity. And I know I've not had a baby, but I've had back issues for many years. And when you have that shift in posture, it can have a knock-on effect onto your feet. A lot of women notice when they're pregnant, they obviously get the swollen feet. They might get sudden more aches and pains in the knees and in the back. So it's really important to be thinking also about how your body, how you can think about your posture as your belly is growing. And so things that can really help, gentle stretches are fantastic. Things like pelvic tilts, really good. Cat and cow exercises. If you're not sure on this, you can even look on the internet. They do very gentle, and like prenatal yoga stretches that are really gentle. Making sure that you're always sitting properly with good back support. When you're standing, really trying to be mindful of standing in the correct posture. So having your shoulders down and to the back, trying to pull in your core, so pulling in your back in towards your spine as much as possible. This will really help to keep your everything, all the muscles, everything relaxed as much as possible. And, thinking about bending, you've now got a belly that's going to make it more difficult to bend. So a lot of people end up starting to bend with their hips, but actually just being mindful, it's about bending with the knees as much as you can. So really still being mindful of that and doing correct bending technique is really important. And some people end up getting like a maternity support belt, which can be really helpful to like lift the belly slightly, take a little bit of pressure off the lower back. And I've known some mothers that have found that really helpful, especially if they're standing on their feet for long periods of time. And just to kind of touch on, there will still be sometimes those symptoms that we've touched on before, more in the first trimester, things like the heartburn and constipation. So just making sure that you're still getting, if you're having heartburn, small frequent meals, and not trying to not eat just before bed. If you are getting constipation, a lot of people do find that in the second trimester, you've got these really high progesterone levels, which can clog you up a little bit. So really trying to make sure that you're getting a good amount of fiber into your diet, loads of vegetables, loads of whole grains, and you can get a variety of different whole grains. There's lots of things out there, quinoa, millet, buckwheat, lots of things out there. And another thing that I tend to find is that people get is leg cramps. You're really, like we said, you've got that kind of extra weight, which is putting a bit of pressure sometimes onto the legs. So really trying to do some calf stretches. And a good thing as well, magnesium, really fantastic for softening those muscles. What can be really nice is like a magnesium spray. I recommend that with women who come through pregnant. It's a really safe way of getting magnesium into without taking like a supplement. It's a really good way of just spraying it on the feet, or a magnesium balm on the feet is fantastic as well. And the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on is really emotional health, because this is the time that you're really starting to envisage what your new life is going to be like. And really, there might also be that anxiety that we touched on about thinking about the third trimester. So really thinking about, touched on breathing, but what else can you also look at? Meditation, journaling, really looking at, can I take some time to really think about how I'm feeling and putting that down on paper? And it's also staying really connected to your social groups. That can be really, really helpful in terms of preparing you for birth, speaking to other women. It sometimes can be beneficial, depending on who you speak to, but definitely staying engaged with your social network. And, sometimes I think it can feel quite isolating, going to hospital appointments, but just being mindful that there are lots of women who've been in the same position as you and who would love to help as well. So that is my session.
Brilliant. A whistle stop tour there, Richelle.
Yes, yes, yes.
We've got a couple of questions. Let me just read them out here. Hang on 2 seconds. So the first question is, you've talked about calories, but how much extra weight should I be gaining or eating each day during trimester 2?
Okay. Um, so healthy weight gain, typically you should be looking to gain really about zero point 0.5 to 1 pound a week. So that's about kind of zero point 0.2, zero point 0.3 kilos a week. But that obviously depends on your pre-pregnancy weight. So the goal is basically, just really trying to make sure that you are getting in those extra calories. But obviously, we want to be making sure that we're not doing excessive gain because that's when we start to tip more into the gestational diabetes sort of picture, and more high risk. So just making sure that you are eating a good amount. It's not about weighing yourself or being stressed about the pregnancy at all. They will be, looking at that when you're going for your scans. But yeah, just making sure that your gain, the normal is to kind of gain about zero point 0.5 to 1 pounds a week, just as a guide.
Yeah, and I think it's important what you said about the type of food as well, because I think like some people think, oh, I can just eat whatever I want, but actually thinking about, oh, it's an extra slice of wholemeal toast with the nut butters on, like not a bag of Haribo. Just those kind of things, I guess, isn't it?
Absolutely, because I think sometimes people, I just got to, yeah, I've got to eat, I've got to feed the baby, but these things all have an impact. They all passing into the maternal, they're all passing, into the placenta, they're all passing to the baby, and we want to make sure that we're really starting off the baby with its best nutrients possible. And if we're having all these sweets and junk food, we're already passing all of these artificial numbers and things that are passing to the baby, which have been shown to also have an effect. So we want to be, yeah, as nutrient conscious as possible.
I've got one more question. It just says, you touched last session on foods to avoid, but what about salad? I heard that I should avoid it.
This is a really common question that I get all the time. And I think it is a really good question. It's because of the fact that salad, it's the same thing with nuts as well. Salad and nuts can also harbor bacteria. But it's important to just follow, I always say you follow the guidelines of the country you're in. UK guidelines are not to avoid salad. Salad, as we know, is very healthy. It comes with lots of things like fiber and vitamins and minerals and things that we absolutely need. I think it's just important to be mindful about, for example, how you're eating your salad. Has all the fruit and vegetables been washed thoroughly beforehand? I actually say to everyone that comes through to me that um, washing with water is actually not necessarily the best thing in terms of killing bugs. So actually, one thing that can be really good is washing the fruit and vegetables with apple cider vinegar. The vinegar kind of kills the bugs, but it's also really good at killing pesticides as well. It's kind of a nice little trick rather than buying organic, just washing the fruit and vegetables or soaking it in apple cider vinegar. You don't really get a taste of it, by the way. It's a good little tip.
That.
Yeah, it doesn't. You might sometimes get a little bit of a taste, but like generally, I personally don't notice it. Um, if you're thinking like even pre-made salads, you want to know like if they were pre-made in a restaurant, how long have they been how long ago were they made? How long ago have they been sitting out long? You shouldn't be having, salad that's been sitting out too long. It's gonna more likely to harbor bacteria. And obviously just being mindful again of dressings. We touched on last time about not having unpasteurized, making sure everything's pasteurized. And so making sure if there are any dressings that there's no like raw egg. Sometimes in things like Caesar salad, there can be raw eggs. So just being mindful of these things with salads. But as a general rule of thumb, salad is very healthy. It's just being mindful of these things.
Yeah, just being careful, basically. I love the tip
Exactly.
about the apple cider vinegar, so I never knew that. So I will be taking that one for my salad for sure. Great.
Brilliant.
Well, I think that was a great session on trimester 2. We're going to leave it there for today. But we've got trimester 3 coming up, haven't we, in the new year? So yeah, watch out for that being advertised and yeah, get in touch for the Zoom link and we will be back with you then, won't we, Richelle?
Yep, in the new year.
Great. Thank you, Richelle.
Thanks.